Airports had always felt soulless to me. Just temporary holding pens for people rushing from one place to another, never fully present. They embodied a kind of detachment I had learned to live with, especially after 10 years of monthly business trips. I used to enjoy flying, it made me feel important, but after years of this routine, I knew I was just another body moving through the system. I was sitting in the lounge at Miami International, sipping on a lukewarm coffee, thinking about how much I missed my family. Rebecca, my wife of 26 years, and our 2 children, Jamie and Mike. They were my world, the one thing that tethered me to reality when work threatened to take over. But lately, even that felt distant. It had been years since Rebecca and I were truly close. Sure, we still lived in the same house, shared the same bed, but somewhere along the way, the connection had faded. I blamed it on the travel, on work, on life. But deep down, I knew better. I hadn't been the husband I used to be. The little things, surprising her with flowers, taking her out on spontaneous dates, even just sitting together without distractions, those had disappeared over time. As I boarded my flight home, I felt an unusual heaviness. The quiet had become oppressive. I missed the days when our home was full of laughter, when the kids were young and there was always something going on. Now Jamie was in pharmacy school and Mike was starting his first year of engineering, and it was just me and Rebecca in that big empty house. I had been dozing on the flight when the landing jolted me awake. I turned my phone on, expecting the usual flood of emails, but instead there were several missed calls and messages from Jamie and Mike. "Dad, call me ASAP," one read. The others were equally urgent. I immediately dialed Jamie's number. My heart raced as I heard her pick up. "Dad, you need to come over to my place," she said, her voice tense. "Mike's here too." "Is someone hurt?" I asked, my mind jumping to worst-case scenarios. "Is your mother okay? Are you okay?" "We're fine," she replied, but her voice wavered. "But you need to come now. We have to talk." I couldn't stand not knowing. As I drove through Denver toward Jamie's apartment, my thoughts were all over the place. Was it an accident? Did something happen to Rebecca? The unease in Jamie's voice had me on edge. When I arrived, the atmosphere inside was suffocating. Jamie and Mike sat on the couch, their faces pale and drawn. I could feel the tension before a single word was spoken. Jamie had tears in her eyes, and Mike looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Dad, we're so sorry," Jamie began, her voice breaking. "We didn't know what else to do." "What happened?" I asked, my heart pounding. My voice was barely steady. "We didn't want to hurt you," Mike said, staring at the floor. "But things got out of hand. We didn't think it would end like this." "What do you mean?" I asked, dreading their answer. Jamie wiped her eyes. "It started a few weeks ago, while you were away on one of your trips. I went over to Mum's for lunch. When I pulled up, I saw a Tesla in the driveway. I didn't recognize it, so I parked down the street and waited. Then I saw a man leave the house and get into the Tesla." My blood ran cold. "Who was he?" "I followed him to his office in Cherry Creek," she continued. "His name is Eric. Dad, Mom, she's been seeing him." Her words felt like a slap to the face. My stomach turned as the reality of what she was saying sunk in. Rebecca was cheating on me. After 26 years of marriage, after raising 2 kids together, after everything we'd built, she was with someone else. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A mix of betrayal and disbelief coursed through me. "We didn't know how," Jamie admitted, looking ashamed. "We didn't want you to get angry and do something." Mike sighed and finally looked me in the eyes. "We didn't want you to confront him and make things worse. So we tried to handle it ourselves." I shook my head, still trying to wrap my mind around what they were saying. Handle it yourselves? What did you do? Jamie and Mike exchanged a guilty glance before Jamie spoke again. "We came up with a plan to embarrass them. We thought if we exposed them in front of the neighbors, it would end things." My heart raced. "What did you two do?" Jamie winced. "I spiked Mom's wine. I mixed in a liquid form of Viagra, thinking it would make them panic." "You did what?" My voice rose in disbelief. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "You drugged your mother?" It wasn't meant to hurt her, Jamie cried, tears welling up again. I just wanted to humiliate them. Mike jumped in, his face red. And I messed with the smoke detector in the garage. I figured I could set off a false alarm, get the fire department to show up and make them rush out half-dressed. I thought it'd be funny if they had to explain themselves in front of everyone. I stared at them, my mind spinning. What happened? There was a fire, Mike admitted, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean for it to happen, but when I messed with the charger on Eric's Tesla, there was a spark and the battery caught fire. You set the garage on fire? I asked, stunned. Mike nodded, unable to look at me. Both cars burned up, but that's not the worst part. I felt sick. What could possibly be worse than that? Jamie took a deep breath. Mum and Eric were asleep when the fire alarm went off. She panicked. Eric was passed out from the wine and she couldn't wake him, so she dragged him out of the house. Naked. The words hit me like a freight train. Naked? I repeated, barely able to comprehend. In front of the entire neighborhood, Jamie whispered. Someone recorded it. Mike has the video. Mike reluctantly handed me his phone, and I pressed play. There it was, Rebecca, my wife, dragging a limp, naked Eric across the front yard. His body flopped down the front steps, his groin bleeding from where it had caught on a nail. His face was scratched and bruised from the carpet, and Rebecca, frantic and terrified, dragged him while the neighbors watched in horror. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was the woman I had spent my life with, the mother of my children, and here she was, a spectacle of public humiliation. My marriage, my dignity, everything I thought I had built with Rebecca was crumbling before my eyes. And then Eric's wife showed up, Jamie added quietly. I looked up at her, my heart pounding. What? Eric's wife, Francine, Jamie explained. She figured out what was going on and showed up while the fire department was still there. She went ballistic, started attacking Eric while he was unconscious. The whole thing was a disaster. I could barely breathe. My wife's affair, my kids' plan to humiliate her, the fire, the naked chaos, all of it was too much. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it all. Where's your mother now? I asked, my voice hoarse. She's at the police station, Jamie replied softly. They took her in for questioning after Francine tried to press charges. They won't hold her, but she's still there. I stood up, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I needed air, I needed space. I'm going home, I said, my voice flat. One of you can pick her up. The drive home was surreal. My mind replayed everything my children had just told me. Rebecca's betrayal, the fire, the humiliation. How had it come to this? The woman I had spent nearly half my life with had thrown everything away for what? A fling with some guy. As I pulled into the driveway, the sight of the damage hit me like a punch to the gut. The garage was blackened, the charred remains of both cars still smoldering. The front steps were stained with blood, and I could see where Rebecca had dragged Eric's body. I stepped inside the house and the smell of smoke hit me immediately. The kitchen was in disarray, the bed in the master bedroom unmade. Everything felt wrong, broken. I couldn't stay here. Not in this house, not with the memories of what had happened. I packed my clothes into garbage bags, not bothering to organize anything. I just needed to get out. As I loaded the last of my things into the car, a police officer pulled up. "Mr. Bond?" he asked. "Yeah, that's me. We're just following up on the fire. Wanted to see if you're doing all right." I nodded. "I'm fine," I lied, the weight of my circumstances pressing down on me. The officer gave me a sympathetic look, and I could see the concern etched on his face. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out," he said before driving away. I felt a flicker of gratitude for his kindness, but it quickly faded as I turned my gaze back to the house. As I drove away, the numbness in my chest started to lift slightly, replaced by a growing resolve. I didn't need Rebecca anymore. I'd spent too long trying to salvage something that was already broken. I was ready to take control of my life, to start fresh, to put this nightmare behind me. In the days that followed, I began the painful process of moving on. I filed for divorce, focusing on separating our finances and finding a new place to live. I wasn't going to let Rebecca's betrayal define me. I had worked hard to provide for my family, and now it was time to build a life that I wanted, not one built on lies and infidelity. Jamie and Mike were devastated, but they understood. They were struggling with their guilt over their actions, and I felt for them. They were only trying to protect me, but their plan had backfired spectacularly. I sat them down one night and told them the truth. You two didn't make things worse. Mom's choices led us here, not your actions. I want you both to know that I love you, and I'm proud of you for wanting to protect me. The weight lifted a little from their shoulders, but I knew the scars would take time to heal. We spent more time together during this period, but it was tinged with sadness. We had gone from a close-knit family to something strained and broken in the blink of an eye. As I began to settle into my new apartment, I found myself thinking about Rebecca less and less. I didn't miss her. At least, not in the way I thought I would. Instead, I felt relief. I could breathe again, free from the weight of betrayal that had settled heavily on my chest for too long. One evening, as I was unpacking boxes, I received a message from Veronica, the woman I had met in the airport lounge. I hadn't thought about her in a while, but her message brought a smile to my face. "Dinner next time you're in town?" it read. I felt a flicker of excitement at the thought of a fresh start, a new connection that had nothing to do with my past. I quickly typed back, "Definitely, looking forward to it." The prospect of seeing her gave me hope. Maybe I could find happiness again. It felt good to think about something other than the pain and humiliation of the last few weeks. It was time to reclaim my life. A few weeks passed, and I continued to focus on myself and my relationship with the kids. I took them out for dinner, spent weekends together, and tried to establish a new routine. We talked openly about what had happened, and while it was painful, it felt good to process it together. One evening, as we sat at dinner, Mike brought up the topic of their plan. "Dad, I know we messed up, but I want you to know that I regret not telling you sooner." "Me too," Jamie added, her eyes downcast. "I thought I could protect you by keeping quiet." I reached across the table and squeezed their hands. "You were trying to do what you thought was right. It's okay to feel angry and hurt. I'm proud of both of you for wanting to protect me." Tears brimmed in Jamie's eyes. "It just feels like everything is falling apart." "Sometimes things have to break for new things to grow," I replied, trying to find the right words. "We're going to be okay. I promise." As the divorce proceedings began, I found myself reflecting more on my life with Rebecca. I realized how easy it had been to overlook the cracks in our relationship. I had been so focused on work and providing for my family that I had neglected the emotional connection we once shared. One night I sat on my couch, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring out the window at the stars. I thought about all the dreams I had for our family, the vacations, the gatherings, the laughter. It was all gone now, replaced by a profound sense of loss. But within that loss, I also felt a glimmer of hope. I could rebuild. I could create new memories with my children, and I could open my heart to new possibilities. Months passed and the divorce was finalized. I had moved into a new place, started new routines, and slowly began to feel like myself again. The initial shock and hurt had dulled into something more manageable. I learned to embrace the freedom that came with change. One evening, as I prepared to meet Veronica for dinner, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I hadn't been on a date in years, and the thought of it was both thrilling and terrifying. As I got dressed, I looked in the mirror and realized that for the first time in a long while I felt good about myself. I had taken control of my life, and now I was ready to explore what came next. When I arrived at the restaurant, Veronica was already seated at a cozy table in the corner. She looked up as I approached, a warm smile spreading across her face. It felt like a spark had ignited inside me, a reminder of what it felt like to connect with someone. "Hi, Tyler," she said, her voice melodic. "I'm so glad you could make it." "Thanks for inviting me," I replied, feeling a flutter of nerves in my stomach. As we talked and shared stories over dinner, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. Veronica was kind, intelligent, and engaging. She asked questions about my life, my kids, and my interests, and I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't thought possible. "I'm sorry to hear about your situation," she said gently as we discussed my recent divorce. "It sounds like it's been a tough time for you and your kids." "It has been," I admitted, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over me. "But I'm trying to focus on the positive now. I want to create a better life for myself and my children." "I admire that," she replied, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. "It takes courage to rebuild after something like that." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and I felt a connection that I hadn't experienced in years. It was refreshing and exhilarating, and for the first time since my marriage fell apart, I felt alive. As the night came to a close, we walked outside together, the cool evening air wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something bright. "Would you like to do this again?" I asked, a hint of nervousness in my voice. "I'd love to," she said, her smile wide and genuine. "Let's keep in touch." As we parted ways, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of my past was still there, but it no longer consumed me. I was ready to move forward, ready to embrace whatever life had in store. In the weeks that followed, I explored this new chapter in my life. Veronica and I went on several more dates, and I began to find joy in the little things again. I rediscovered hobbies I had neglected, went hiking in the beautiful Colorado mountains, and spent quality time with my kids. I felt like I was waking up from a long slumber. One weekend, I took Jamie and Mike on a hiking trip. The fresh air and stunning views invigorated me, and I could see the weight lifting off my children's shoulders too. As we reached the summit, we stood together, taking in the breathtaking scenery. "Thanks for bringing us, Dad," Jamie said, her voice filled with appreciation. "I think we all needed this." "Yeah, it's nice to get away from everything for a bit," Mike added. I smiled, feeling a sense of contentment. "I'm proud of both of you. We're going to be okay." As we headed back down, I realized that while the past would always be a part of me, it didn't have to define my future. I was ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. Months turned into a year, and I had settled into my new life. The divorce was finalized, and I had a better understanding of what I wanted. I remained close with Jamie and Mike, who were thriving in their respective studies. I was also growing closer to Veronica, who had brought warmth and light into my life. One evening, as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I turned to her and said, "I never thought I could feel this way again. Thank you for being patient with me." She smiled, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. "You're a wonderful person, Tyler. I'm glad we met." I reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. "I'm ready to move forward, with you if you'll have me." "I'd like that," she said softly, and in that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had finally closed the door on the past and opened a new one filled with hope. Share your thoughts in the comment section, do like and share the video, subscribe the channel. Thanks.